I'd like to greet my husband happy birthday today. And thank you so much for coming with me all the way to Marion College. We live in Paranaque, so you can imagine how far we traveled coming here. So, and thank you also for Joel for inviting me today to speak about Google and stuff that you can actually use for your schools. Most of you from the academy here? Yes. Okay, so this is something more about cloud computing, the platform that you can use for teaching. And there's quite a lot of stuff that's very interesting, right? So like Google, our main mission is to actually organize the world's information and make it accessible and useful for everybody. So like now, it's easier because it's not only on the web, but you can also search using your phone, right? Yeah. And we have evolved so much since way back, since 1995. Right? So if you go online and check out the history of Google, you'll see a lot of stuff. And you'll also see that we're not only a search engine, but we have a whole lot of other products, including Blogger, or even maps. Diba? So, marami siya. So, eventually, from search, we veered towards ads, of course. Kailangan mabuhay kami. And eventually, we also introduced our whole slate of new apps that you can utilize. So, if you notice, may I ask first, who of you guys here watch stuff on YouTube? Thank you very much, because that actually made us one of the top 10 countries in the whole world for usage on YouTube. My colleagues keep asking me, why do Filipinos have so much time watching videos on YouTube? So I told them, well, it's not because there are a lot of new stuff on YouTube that we don't usually find on our TV sets, right? That's one. And, well, sabi nila, and the user sessions mas mahaba compared to any other country, which is quite unbelievable, considering that our internet in the Philippines is not at par with other countries. I go, mahaba kasi talaga pasensya ng mga Pilipino, and you're not being entertained. So, like, these are some things that we usually do outside of work, right? Right? The 1+, we do blogging, we do a lot of stuff, like Facebook and stuff outside of work. So what we saw is, we said, why is it that going online is much more fun to do after work? Because, of course, during work, you're kind of stuck using whatever tools that your school or your employer provides for you. Yeah. So we said, maybe we should try to make it easier for people to work. Let's make it much more fun. But as fun as what they do offline when they're not at work. So we said, because there's a falling cost of storage, it's more than that. Broadband is much more easier now to get, diba? You can even use mobile dongles nowadays. And tools of production is much easier. And there's been a lot of innovation in consumer technologies, diba? I would assume most of you here use smartphones. Yung phones na pwede mag-internet. Yes, diba? So, unlike before, most of us, pang-text lang yung phone, pang-call lang yung phone. Now we use these things for a lot of other things. When we get lost, we go to our phone and go on Google Maps, right? To look for the place that we're looking for. But last week, one of my friends was in Singapore. And then when he finally got back to the hotel, he messaged me, buti na lang Google Maps ng Singapore ng Google Maps. I go, why? What happened? Sabi niya, he found himself in a street late in the evening, wala siyang makuha na taxi. So he says, I didn't know where to call for a cab, so wala akong choice except to walk back to my hotel. So he went to his phone, went online, went to Google Maps, and then searched for himself. Kung nasan pa siya, nakita niya, oh, nasa Napier Road ako, somewhere in Singapore, somewhere near I'll let you do software daw. Ang sabi niya, nakita niya immediately how to walk back to object. So, that made things easier for him. So, there is so much innovation in consumer technologies. Kasi siguro 20 years ago, nawawala ka ng ganun eh. Kung ka na lang, take ka na lang daw umaga, di ba? So, one interesting trend, as I mentioned earlier, is consumer tech is much more fun to work with. Much more fun to use. Diba? After work, mas make you look forward to go online. You use Twitter, as you mentioned, or you work. You use all these microblogging tools and stuff. You go online to your personal email, like for example, Gmail or Yahoo Mail or Hotmail. And then, mas mataas ang user satisfaction versus when you're at work using your pop mail from your school, which is sometimes so difficult when you're outside of school, hindi mo na math kids, correct? Yeah. So, that has been the experience with businesses and the education sector when it comes to, at the very least, mail, and using other tools that are made available for you. So we said, let's do something about it. So we came up with what you call Google Apps. And of course, there's an education edition. We merged it, and we saw that user satisfaction increase. Kasi sa Google, because we use the same thing, we basically never stop working. Hanggang minsan, sumasagot ako minsan ng mail. So like the world today, diba? For example, you're doing a draft of, let's say, a thesis. So you come with, of course, your draft number 1. So there are 4 people in your thesis group. John, Bob, Sally, and Rachel. And then each person suddenly makes their own version. So may version 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. And then, of course, what they do is they try to collaborate to create revision 2.0. Eventually, they create another version. Eh si Rachel, babagal-bagal. Which always happens, diba? In any thesis group, it happens, diba? Ako lang na nag-thesis ako ng college, 2 lalaki yung thesis mates ko. Lubit ako. You have to submit it now. And the time na yun, word start pa kami. Aray. So, mas mahirap yung revision ng time na yun, diba? Napakaswerte ng mga estudyante ngayon. So, now, that creates confusion already. Which document is actually the final document? Because so many people are working on the same thing. It's created a mess, diba? So, that was actually my job back in college. Ako yung taga-type. Ako yung taga-gawa ng thesis. Yung taga-research, yung thesis mates ko, but I put everything together. And we actually created 2 books ng thesis namin. So, that was back in 1999. Although in 1999, graduate na ako. And it was painful back then. Using WordStar, and eventually we upgraded, nagkaroon na ng Microsoft Word. Noong panahon na yun, we upgraded WordStar to Microsoft Word. But it was very, very painful to edit stuff. Okay? And one thing as well back then was, I lived in Parañaque, my thesis mate, one guy lived in Las Piñas, the other one lived in Malabon. So you can imagine how difficult it was for us to actually work together. There was no such thing as email when we were working on our thesis. So what we wanted to happen is to bring back the core. Because what's happening, especially with like your MIT and your schools, they're probably most of the time firefighting, fixing people's mail service on their PCs instead of working on the core, meaning working on apps that would make things easier for you. Like let's say working on an app to better enrollment, working on an app to make it easier for students to apply for admission. So we said, let's work on bringing back the core because these are things that are so basic, right? So that's something that Google really worked on for a couple of years. So what we did was, the first time that we actually implemented Google Apps with a huge school The school was Arizona State University. They have 65,000 students. So you can imagine. They had an existing mail system, and kumbaga parang they had 30 people in their IT department just firefighting for their mail system. So when we offered Google Apps for Education for them, and Google Apps for Education is completely free, they said they had a lot of concerns. Siyempre, diba, sabi nila, baka mawala. And kasi sila nasa kanila lahat ng servers nila. And what we were proposing was for them to put everything in the cloud. That cloud was Google, because we own all these data centers and servers, etc. So we said to ASU, Siga, this is what we'll do. We'll make it as a choice for the students to either choose using your old mail system or to migrate their mail to Google. Guess nyo, for 65,000 students, how long did it take ASU to migrate everybody to Google Apps? Any guess? 1 year?
1 day.
Hindi naman 1 day. Oh. Pahirapan naman yun. And it was by option, ha? So students had to log in themselves and then parang opt in for it. Any guess?
6 months?
Like, only took 2 weeks. Tapos na. Diba? So all the students parang decided to go with it. And we saw that the pace of innovation actually went up for ASU when they allied with Google, because it made things very easy for them. So a lot of other schools actually have been using it in other countries and even in the Philippines. Later I'll show you kung sino sa Philippines yung gumagamit. So what we try to communicate is what we'd like Google Apps to help in is for the platform to focus on the end user. For the MIT people who handle your IT stuff in your school to focus on the end user and create apps, meaning focus on the core. So it's cloud computing. So the schools need not worry about purchasing a lot of servers and other stuff, diba? Mamahal yun eh. Hindi din maabot, diba? And of course, it will work on the world's largest supercomputer. So Google has many server farms and data centers located all over the world. And if you notice, we never go down. Isa na yung kita lang sa Twitter, they say, cannot access my Gmail. And I will just reply back and say, clear cache. Kasi malamang napupunin yung cache nila. And it always works. And of course, innovation. I was mentioning earlier to somebody that Google Docs, but every single day, Google comes out with something new, especially for the apps stuff. So Google Apps actually includes user-centric applications. Of course, one of the important things that that's in there is communication tools, which include email, of course, and then you can chat. You can also do voice calls using Gtalk. And then you can also create and store online documents. So this solves the problem of collaboration online. So if we actually had Google Docs way back when I was doing in my thesis a decade ago, siguro hindi kami nahahaggard. Siguro my thesis mate wouldn't have had to come to my house all the way from Malabon at 2 in the morning just so we can finish our thesis. It was that bad before. Show and share, we have what you call Google Sites. It's like wikis. When I was teaching in LaSalle, I actually used this a lot for my students. And there were times, because I remember what they would do is, I would just leave notes on the Google Sites and then just tell them to check it so that they can get their assignments on. And of course, to organize calendaring and start pages. Calendar is one of the most favorite apps that the Asian Institute of Management uses. Okay? So this actually, Google Apps actually runs on our infrastructure. And it's built as a platform. And almost every single day, there's actually a new feature that comes out of it. It includes Gmail, Gtalk, Calendar, and spreadsheets, docs. When I had one of our product managers from Google Apps visit the Philippines a few years ago, I told him, nag-complain na ako sa kanya. Sabi ko, ano ba yan? Ang dami na namang feature na nilalaunch for Google Apps. I have to continue studying the new stuff that you come out with. And then he said, oh, hindi pa kami nagsastart sa lagay na yan. And then, yeah, I noticed, since the time that he came to the Philippines, I noticed that they actually introduced a lot of new features. Hindi kasi kami, Google kasi doesn't really launch stuff by versions, but we launch features. So there may be a new feature that launches every day, every week, and stuff. So that's the reason why we have a blog. Okay. So we have a couple of editions, and of course, what's relevant for you guys is the education editions, which is completely free. For those who have businesses, you can also use the standard edition, which is a cap of about 50 users. So actually in Google, we use our own dog food. That's what we call Google Apps internally. And it's very helpful, especially since, like for me, for example, I work remotely. I work alone in the Philippines, and I have to get in touch with everybody else in Google from all over the world. Minsan hindi ko na alam kung nasaan yung kausap ko. Kaya nasa ka ba? Anong time zone mo dyan, diba? So, and it's actually also how I try to track where my boss is. But sometimes she flies all over the world. So, whenever, for example, I need to speak with her, just look at her calendar and then book some time on her calendar so that she can call me up, diba? Okay, so one of the schools in the Philippines that has been using Google Apps largely is De La Salle, Philippines. It's been quite a tedious implementation because they have 17 schools across the country with about 100,000 students. So, and we're really, kumbaga hinahabol namin yung time na mag-celebrate ng Lasal ng One Lasal, which is the 100th year of Lasal next year. Kaya ako naka-agree kasi tatakbo ko dun after ko sa inyo. So, that's what we're currently doing. We're deploying it, and we're deploying it by school. And they're actually using just one domain at delasal.ph for everybody, so that any LaSalle student from any LaSalle school will have the same email domain, delasal.ph. So, hindi nyo ma-differentiate kung galing siya sa Marinas, Manila, Benil, or whatever, diba? So, we actually, medyo mabagal yung implementation namin because we only have one person doing the whole implementation for it. But it's been fun, and we've been working for it. And they've already realized several $100,000 of annual savings because they realized soon enough na natin kailangan bumili ng sarili nating servers. And their people, their IT people, instead of focusing on just fixing their mail, nakaka-focus na sila sa mga apps. So, now, if you see De La Salle Philippines, they're having more content about their school online. They already have a blog. They're focusing on other missions that they have for One La Salle and stuff because they can now easily collaborate na wala na yung malaking communication gap among them. So maybe just to show you a sample, this is the My Google page, which you can actually customize and put in. So if, for example, you want to put in news about your school or mga happenings, kunyari na kayong blog na gusto nyo yung RSS internally, and also your school calendar, you can put in there so that when the students log in, this is the first thing that they see. This is how the webmail login looks like. And then this is the mail. Now you can actually customize it using your logo. During the time that I screen captured this, hindi pa pwede mag-iba-iba yung colors kasi. So, but now you can make it green, make it red, or blue. And the calendar. And then, I use this a lot for my students when I was teaching in La Salle. So I added all their calendars so that I can easily book time with them if needed. And of course, Google Docs. Google Sites. These are things that you can actually experience using your Gmail accounts. May I know who here have Gmail accounts already? Very good, diba? So, diba, tignan niyo yung mga tabs sa taas? These are all kind of the same, diba? Similar. A difference kasi with Google Apps, you actually use your domain for it. So, let's say at miriam.edu.ph or let's say at ateneo.edu.ph. And Ateneo is actually implementing Google Apps. And the Asian Institute of Management has been so happy with Google Apps. And the experience with them has been different as well. Because similar to ASU, what we did was, the students were given two choices. To either use Google Apps or to use the competing education apps. Hindi na sabi ko sino. Kilala nila yun. So, they were given a choice. Parang sabi nila, we'll just make the student choose kung ano yung gusto nilang gamitin na system. Either Google or sa competitor. So that's perfectly fine with us. And also because in the first place, the school wasn't going to pay us anything. Anyway, so choice nila. So we did this and then we had the students choose. Within that 2 years ago with AIM, and syempre nag-stick si Google Apps. And actually recently they asked me to add more users for their students. So AIM has been using it a lot. Ayan. So they automatically give accounts to their students whenever they come in. So in summary, Google Apps, the use for it is one, of course, for communication using Gmail and Gmail. Collaboration, mainly through Google Docs or Google Sites. And of course, it simplifies your life. As I mentioned earlier, diba, the horrors of doing your thesis 10 years ago. The students nowadays are very lucky, and instead of focusing on the time that they need to keep traveling or going overnight to their classmates' place, they can just focus on the content of their thesis. And of course, innovation. That's something that's very important to Google. And we continue to add new features for it. Actually, for Google Sites, I know that we're already also creating templates for businesses so that they can use it online. Last year, we actually also used Blogger to create websites. So, you know, and actually there's a lot more other stuff on Google that you can use.